Good morning, or good morning. What am I talking about? Good evening, Bay community members. Tonight is going to be a very special, well, very close to my heart session. So welcome. I'm glad you're here, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So I will go ahead and get going by sharing my screen, and we will get going. There we go. I don't know why I couldn't find sharing my screen. Anyway, okay. So tonight, for our parenting and mental health series, we're going to talk about grief. So there are a lot of things that I want to talk about related to grief. I definitely have had many people in my office that have dealt with grief, and there are a bunch of things I want to go over. So I'm going to go over just the basics of grief. I'm also going to go over, um, what it's like to grieve as a parent and while you're parenting, and we'll go from there. And if anyone joins us and we have questions, of course, I'm happy to answer those questions and we'll go from there. Okay. So the first thing I want to talk about is that grief is what we go through after loss. And oftentimes we think of grief as something that happens after a death of a loved one, and that absolutely is part of the grief process. And it also can be, grief can happen when we lose something that feels like it's part of our identity. So it might be a relationship. So a divorce, a breakup, you can go through a grieving process. Losing a job that was part of your identity can be part of a grieving process. Moving somewhere where it's a permanent move can feel like grief. And so I just want to put that in perspective. So even if you haven't lost someone that you love, or someone that you're close to, you can still feel aspects of grief. What you're seeing in front of me right now is what we call the stages of grief. So they say stages, and I just want to remind people to be kind to yourself. Grief isn't linear. And what I mean by that is that just because it's not like when you go to school, you start in kindergarten and then you go to first grade and second grade and you keep going up. That's a linear progression. Okay. Grief doesn't work that way. So saying that there are stages is sort of accurate and sort of not. So we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight, and hopefully some ways that you can help cope with your stages of grief, and some ways that you can help others. And if you're a parent, ways you can help your child. So I want you to notice that within this stages of grief, it starts with shock and denial. Bentley wanted to make sure she was here for the session, so sorry about that. First, shock and denial, we see that a lot. And oftentimes when I have someone in my office that is going through a grieving process, I have them look at this. And I have them look at it because I want them to see where they are on this spectrum, and to recognize that even if you think you've gotten to an acceptance phase and you're starting to explore your next chapter and what this loss has meant to you, and what you've learned from it, and what you're taking from it, and how you're going forward, you might still go back into an anger phase from time to time. And certainly when certain holidays or things that bring up that loss to you come back. So be patient with yourself and understand that this is a process. And we're going to talk about what this process is all about. So when we grieve, we often feel deep feelings of sadness, despair, anger, regret, numbness, confusion. Those are all normal. And it can last for several weeks or several years or more, depending on how expected it was, how sudden it was, or any other combination of things that we'll talk about tonight. Point is, it's a process. And what we want to get to is a stage where remembering our loved one can go from solely a point of sadness, anger, and despair to a point of maybe a little bit of joy, maybe a little bit of sadness, right? That doesn't necessarily have to go away. And that getting over a loss doesn't mean that sadness goes away. It just means that you've created meaning from the loss. Or even if you can't create total meaning, there's some sort of essence that you walk away with that you can say, you know what? I'm going to go on with my life because this is what this person would want for me. Or even if the death was something that was sudden and not understood, you can still find some semblance of assurance of why you continue. And that's what we want to get to. Really, the remembering of that loved one is a processing and an act of love. And the fact that you are grieving is also an act of love. So I want to talk a little bit more about that as a parent. So as a parent, it's hard enough to experience this loss on your own. It gets exponentially harder when we are raising children or taking care of other people or have a highly intense job that's very, needs us a lot. So I want to walk you through ways that you can help your children process this and know that everyone has their own journey. So I'm going to give some suggestions. I've talked to friends of mine that, have recently lost people they're very close with. I'm also pulling from having people that have been in my office that have gone through a grieving process. I'm tapping into my own aspects of grief when I have experienced a great loss. So all of this is a culmination. However, you're going to go through your own process. I want you to, when you are dealing with this as a parent, it's hard, right? There are days where you just don't feel great. And I want to make sure that you understand that you can use your village. So if, your friends, family, community, right? It's okay to ask for help. And it's okay. It is human nature to lend a hand and rely on others. In fact, I often do this with folks that have gone through a diagnosis that seems crippling, seems devastating. And we start to talk about what it's like to ask for help. And we, for some reason in our society, have been conditioned that asking for help is a sign of weakness. I would posture that asking for help is actually a sign of courage. I don't know too many armies or military entities that are a military entity of one. They go out in large groups. They depend on each other. Okay. And we often consider military entities as being strong, having courage, being brave. Well, I want you to think of yourself that way and recognize that when you ask for help, when you rely on others to do certain aspects of a job, that's not actually a sign of weakness. That's a sign of strength because you recognize where you need help and then you can be strong where you know you can be strong. So keep that in mind. Some things that I've been told by people going through grieving, again, other things I've pulled upon, is lowering your expectations. What do I mean by that? I mean, if you're a parent and you've gone through a great loss and your family is going through this grieving process, it's okay if your house isn't perfectly kept clean. It's okay if the laundry sits for a week. It's okay if you order takeout 4 days in a row. It's okay. No one's judging you. No one is expecting you to be perfect. So what did that look like for some of my friends that, were parenting through grief? It meant that their kids sometimes got more screen time than they normally would. And that sometimes their kids didn't get as much help with their homework or their school assignments as they would before. It meant that sometimes they had to carpool to get their kids to different activities as opposed to just taking them on their own. It's understandable. And people, and I've talked about this, when you ask someone for help, you're actually giving them a gift. You're giving them the ability to do something kind for someone else. And that's actually a real gift. And that makes that other person feel good. Okay. So obviously everything's done in moderation, right? If you keep going to the same pool for help over and over and over again, then it might go from feeling good to feeling taxed. However, you're allowed to ask other people for help, right? Taking your kids to a fast food restaurant instead of making homemade food, that's okay. If the kids get the same thing in their lunchbox every day because you don't have the time, that's okay, right? Again, like I said before, the house doesn't need to be perfectly clean. Toys can be all over the house. You all can be sitting on the couch staring at screens for an hour or so. It's okay. Everyone grieves in their own way, and it's okay to deal with it. Okay. So give yourself that space. Show your emotions. Crying is normal. Laughing and joking is normal. Anger is normal. Confusion is normal. Wanting to be alone is normal. And wanting to be with other people is all normal while grieving. In a recent service I went to of a Dear Bay community member of ours, one of the people speaking made a comment of, you're going to feel conflicting emotions today. You're going to laugh and you're going to cry. And that's part of it, because we're losing, when we grieve, we're losing something of ourselves. And we both have to feel okay to let it go while also coping with what it means to let something go. So what does that mean? Learning how to cope? It means you have to talk about it. Okay. It's okay to talk about it and celebrate, and combine with that, tell stories about, if it's a person that you lost, tell stories about it. Celebrate what that person would enjoy, right? If their favorite holiday was Halloween, decorate for Halloween and do it in their honor, right? In the immediate following, routines are going to be key, not just for you, but also for your kids. Keeping those routines, trying to stick to that self-care routine that you had is going to be really helpful. If you miss a day, it's okay, right? Don't be hard on yourself. In past weeks, I've talked about creating a joy list. Use it. So for those of you that have created a joy list, remembering sitting down, writing 20 things that bring you joy. They're fleeting moments. This is like squirrels fighting in a park, watching a sunrise, seeing a leaf fall from a tree. Those all can bring you joy, right? I want you to pull out that joy list and make sure that every day you're finding one of those things to go do. And even if it doesn't bring you the same level of joy that it normally does because you're grieving, just feel grateful for that item, that thing. Feel grateful that you can still watch a sunset. And maybe a little sad that you're not doing it with your loved one. However, like, remember that it brings you joy and remember that connection. So again, like connecting with nature, right? Nature is something that's always there for us to connect to and is always there. And be in awe of nature and all the things that it provides us and does for us. So take a walk. Find positive things that are a good outlet for your emotions. Often when I've gone through grieving, I'm a runner, I would go for a run, and I would run until I was so tired that I just couldn't move or cry anymore. Sometimes that's what you have to get to. So those are some things that you can do for yourself. There are some other things that we can do that I want to take a moment. This is something I do with a lot of my folks. And what I do is I actually go through this very special meditation. And in that meditation, we go through something that you can take away. So I want to take a moment and we're going to do that meditation together. And this is something that you can take away with you, and you can do it at any time on your own. And we're going to do another meditation at the end that's guided. And so we're going to try both of these and see how you feel, or take away what you can from tonight. And if you take away one thing that helps you, then I'm super grateful that you were able to do that. So let's walk through this meditation. Sure I get the right one. Sure I'm sharing sound, optimizing for video. It's this one. All right, so we're gonna start. I want you to get comfortable. Once you've found a comfortable spot, I want you to gently close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing that. I want you to breathe in through your nose, hold your breath, and then breathe out slowly for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good. Breathe in again for 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. Breathe out through your mouth slowly for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This relaxed state, I want you to hear my voice. Just allow your mind to listen to my voice. Going where your mind takes you. If it takes you away from what I'm talking about, just allow your mind to do so. Say thank you and bring yourself, your attention back to my voice. Right now, I want you to picture a loved one that you've lost recently. Either someone that has died, or through a breakup or a divorce, or someone that's moved far away. Picture that person standing in front of you or sitting in front of you, not too far away. See their face, notice their movement if there is any. If you can smell a certain smell, maybe a perfume or a cologne they always wore, I want you to breathe in for a second and smell that smell. I want you to be present with this person. And I want you to feel all the love, all the compassion, all the empathy and caring that that person brought into your life. Feel how all of that love greets your body. As you stare at that person, I want the picture of that person, or it might even be an animal, to slowly fade away into a ball of glowing light. That light will take on a color. What color is there for you? It may be blue, purple, red or pink, green. What color has that loving entity dissolved into in this glowing ball of light in front of you? I want you to see that glowing ball of light in front of you. I want you to feel the warmth that that light is emanating on your skin. And as you breathe in, I want you to imagine that glowing light energy to go into your nose. As you hold your breath, I want you to see all of that light start to fill your head, your chest, your abdomen. The light fills your entire body. And as you breathe out this first time, all the darkness, that's in your body, I want you to slowly breathe it out. Breathe out the darkness and watch the darkness dissolve as it passes by this glowing, loving light. I want you to breathe in this loving light again, allowing it to fill your whole body again. Allow your body to feel this glowing, loving energy. How does your body feel? Feel the warmth. Feel the contentment. Feel the safety that that loving light is giving you. And recognize that that is the love that this person, this entity has given you. And that you can tap into anytime. That loving connection is always present for you. Breathe in again. And allow that loving connection to fill your body. Allow yourself to feel that loved one hugging you as that warm, loving light does. I want you to take a moment to feel and express internally gratitude, that connection that not only brought you all of this happiness and love, but now brings you sadness because you will no longer have that person physically with you. That sadness is equitable to the amount of love and light that that person shared with you. And that love and light stays with you forever. All you have to do is tap in that feeling of love that person brought you. Breathe it in. Hold it in your body and allow it to comfort and soothe you. And now as you breathe out gratitude, happiness for that time that you had with this person, that love that you developed, that connection that you developed with that person. Take this feeling, this visualization with you. Keep it close to your heart, knowing that you always have this, no matter where you are. As I come out of this meditation, I want you to slowly bring awareness back to your body. Breathe in the love one more time. As you slowly open your eyes, allow yourself to keep that beauty and love inside of you. Hope that meditation felt good to you. That is truly one of my favorite meditations to do with those that are grieving, to remind us that we always have the ability to connect to those that we've lost, to connect to that which was so loving and kind that we now feel sadness in its loss. So I want to continue with our presentation tonight. And I want to now shift from some self-care, which is so, so important for you to have as a parent, so that you can then be grateful and empathetic towards your children. And so what I want to talk about a little here is how we handle grieving while being a parent. Talking to a child about death or even dying is challenging and confusing and can be so difficult. The suggested ideas and phrases that I'll point out are just a starting point and are just meant as a guiding light for you as you navigate this journey in your way. There's no right way to talk about your loss, and whatever words or empathy or compassion or love that you share, it will be the best that you can do in that moment with what you have. We want to break down a little bit. I want to break down a little bit of what's normal for children at different developmental stages, because they will present differently in stages of grief. And I want you to kind of be aware of what we normally see. That doesn't mean that if your child doesn't present the way, that doesn't mean that it's an instant worry. We'll talk about that a little later and when it's appropriate to maybe find extra help in the resources that you have. So first, I want to mention adolescence. So adolescents at this age have an adult level of understanding about death. And they also have the cognitive skills to understand abstract comments or abstract concepts, such as heaven, spirituality, life after death, making meaning of something. They will be able to have conversations like that. And so teens may also have strong beliefs about fairness and suffering and what happens after death, and that's okay. And they may question your beliefs because theirs may be a little different, and that's okay. The important part is that you talk about it and that you are non-judgmental while you're listening to what they believe, and that you also are honest with them. So some things you might see coming from your adolescence, right? So we're talking 13 and up. You might see a presenting behavior that the child says, I'm fine. Stop badgering me about this. I'm fine. I'm okay. And that might be their coping mechanism. And just pay attention to the other things that are going on for them, because they may not be fine. And I use air quotes. That might be their way of saying, I don't really know how to cope with this, or I don't know how to express what I'm feeling. So what will be, and I'll talk about suggestions to help, what will be really important for you is to model ways to handle grief and to be really open about it. And what will be important for you is to not sugarcoat things for their benefit, because they will catch on to that. And they might not fully understand why that person is gone, why the loss happened. But you can be as honest with them as possible and say, like, I don't totally know why this happened, but it did. And now I have to figure out a way to be okay with it or to find a new normal. So you might also see teens or adolescents experience greater anxiety, anger, or sadness. See that, and that's all normal. Their sleeping patterns or eating patterns or their mood shifts might change. That's all normal. Physical pain is often in all stages of children can come about. They might start to say they have pains in their body or they have stomach aches. That can be a sign that's part of their grieving process. I say adulting. So often with teens, when they see their parent going through something really hard and they know it's really hard, and there might be an aspect of them, and you might see this in an adult sibling as well, or an adult partner, where they don't feel like they have permission to grieve as hard as you do because it was your close person. So they start adulting, right? They make meals for you, or they try to be fine when they're not fine. Recognize that, and I'll make sure that you allow them and give them permission to not be okay and not to be okay with you. These teens might also feel helpless and abandoned or out of control, and there might be feelings of distrust, and that's all part of this. So telling them the truth is, suggestions help, right? telling them the truth is going to be important. The longer the truth is kept from them, and in some cases that can happen, maybe it was a close friend versus a family member that they see all the time, and you're really struggling with it because it was a best friend from childhood that is no longer with you, and that feels really hard. And you don't tell your kids about it, but then you have these moments of sadness. They're not going to understand, and they're not going to know where to place this shift in you, but they're noticing the shift. And not telling them isn't going to make it easier for them. In fact, what will happen is if you wait too long to tell them, it will create a form of distrust because they'll wonder why you didn't trust them enough to tell them. So tell them the truth. Tell them the truth about what happened as much as you can, and tell them the truth about how you're doing. The truth is, you're not okay. You're upset, you're angry, you're at any one of those stages in the grief process. And the truth is, you're just trying to figure out how to get by. That gives them a really clear place of where they are. Continuing routines as much as possible is going to be helpful for you. It's going to be helpful for your kids. Sharing good memories, going back through photo albums, or, now we have slideshows on Google that come up, and Google loves to show us old photos. When those come up, feel sad, but show it to your kids too and be like, hey, look what happened. I just saw, a picture of grandpa, or I just saw a picture of, so-and-so, and show it to them. And then maybe share a good story about them. Talk about it. Allow them to provide emotional support and allow them to feel emotional support from their peers. As adolescents, peer support is really important to them. So you have to allow them to have that peer connection and give them permission to do things that are teen-like, and allow them to not feel guilty for going out to the movies or going to a party or hanging out with friends. Let them know that that's okay. And that's part of what you want them to do and what that person that's gone would want them to do. Cry if you need to. Be sad if you need to. Just be honest about where you are so that they know how to navigate that emotion with you and around you. Middle childhood. This is like 9 to 12-ish, 8 to 12-ish, around that age, right? So it's like the end of elementary school and middle school. They're going to present a lot of the same things that teenagers do. At this age, they, also fully understand what death, being dead and dying means, or losing a loved one permanently, through whatever means. They understand that it's permanent and that the person isn't coming back if it was a death. They also may have a good sense. They're also going to understand when an adult's being honest with them or not. So again, with them, you need to be honest. You need to tell them the truth and you need not sugarcoat it for them as well. They get it. Acting like nothing's wrong is going to tell them that they're not allowed to act sad. So then they're going to push down emotions that might not be healthy for them. So allow them to, show them that crying or feeling sad is okay. And, at this age, because they're, middle school is a tough age and they're trying not to stand out, they want to fit in. So they might not know how to fully navigate feeling sad and upset and down about losing someone and being around their peers that may have never experienced it before. So their peers don't know how to comfort them. That doesn't mean you don't let their peers try. And it doesn't mean you don't let them spend time with their peers. Absolutely allow them to be kids, allow them to spend time with their friends, give them that time. And also, recognize that they're also going through a huge emotional and neurochemical shift at this time in their life. So letting them noticing mood shifts, recognize that it might not be grief, it could just be puberty, right? And notice some of the other stuff that might come up, which are very similar to the other stages, like anxiety, anger, sadness, changing in anything normal, sleeping, eating, their mood, physical pain, stomach aches, headaches. For middle children, because that might be confusing to separate their mood shifts that are associated with grieving and their mood shifts are associated with being in middle school. They might get aggressive because they're frustrated. Okay. They might feel helpless and abandoned because this person has left them and they don't know how to make up for that loss. So they might have attempts to combat their feelings and hide them because they're trying to fit in. So recognize that and allow them safe places to express their emotions and to connect. Next, elementary school kids. So this is, 5 to about 9, 10-ish, maybe 11. Their behaviors are going to be a little bit different. Children at this age naturally express curiosity about death. They're trying to understand what it is, why it happens, what happens after death. This is a good point. If you have family beliefs or traditions, talk about them. If you believe in life after death, talk about it. If you don't, talk about it, right? Talk about continuing to have that connection with them, maybe setting up, a photo album that has pictures of the lost person in it so that you can go to it and share good memories. I know some people put up pictures with like a candle. You can go over and you can light the candle and just be in the moment and share that connection with that meditation that I had earlier, just feeling that connection, that love that you once felt from that person just for a moment. Movies like Coco are really good movies to watch because it might allow them to connect in some way of celebrating the loss of a loved one and living life to the fullest while we're alive. Kids at this age might also feel an unfairness. They might feel like it doesn't make sense and they want to take revenge. They don't like what's happened. So if they feel like something that the person that is no longer with them, was wronged, they might get anger around that. And talking through that's going to be really important, and understanding where their perspective is going to be really big. They understand by the age of 7, and this is, we're putting kids into big categories here, right? By the age of 7, most kids understand that death is irreversible. And they may kind of seem like they're okay. So you want to look for little things at this age. Because they might not have the words to articulate, I'm feeling really bad, or I really miss this person, but they might have worries and fears around death or safety or separation. You might notice that separation anxiety increases during the stage, or that your school age child regresses emotionally a little bit. Spend time loving that child and letting them know that they're loved and they will continue to be loved. Recognize that you are worthy of love and will continue to be loved. So there might be some attention issues there. Sometimes at this age, kids go the opposite direction, and we see this in adults too, where they go for perfectionism. If they keep everything just so and just in order, nothing like this will ever happen again. So this can definitely happen when the death was sudden and tragic. All deaths are tragic. That's the wrong word. But when the death was sudden and maybe from a mistake that happened, they might go to perfectionism because if they don't make a mistake, then something bad won't happen again. It might also present in controlling things like food intake. So just be aware of it and talk about it, right? Express how you feel helpless and wished you could have controlled the outcome, but you couldn't. And you have to come to terms with it, that it doesn't mean that, you're not sad, and it doesn't mean that everything isn't out of control. So they often ask questions at this age, answer them and be as truthful as you can in the words that you only know how to use. And if you don't know the answer, just say, I don't know. Let's look it up together. So these are all things that you can do for an elementary school kid. When we get to preschool, this age, some have a concrete understanding of death and some don't. Some might think through imaginary thinking that that person's going to come back to life. They might think that if they make a wish, or they do some sort of ritual, the person can come back, or they might see the person imaginary, as a vision. They might feel hungry or pain or cold and imagine that that's the person. And that's all okay. They also might, if they happen to have a fight with the person or something negative right before the person passed, they might have nightmares or feel like the person died, it was their fault. And that's a good one to talk about and process to make sure that they understand that that's not their fault, right? And as a parent, don't try not to take it personal if a child at this age is struggling being soothed. Sometimes the child is struggling to know what they need, and that's okay too. So for this stage and stages younger, so preschool and toddlers, use concrete terms. What I mean by that is don't talk about, someone going to a new town when they've passed away. Don't talk about them going to a farm, or I'm trying to think of other, colloquialisms that we've used, but use concrete terms. Their body no longer works and their spirit has gone here. Be very concrete about it so they understand that that person isn't, you can't just say that the person's gone away. What does that mean? Does that mean they're going to come back? Right? That might create a lot of questions that are going to be hard to answer. So the more concrete and direct you are about it, believe it or not, kids are pretty good at handling this stuff. And in fact, I found that preschool and toddler age children are some of the greatest gifts at funerals because they notice people's pain and all they want to do is hold your hand or give you a hug. And that reminds you of how precious life is and the love that you felt for that person that you've lost. And so they're wonderful reminders of why we are still living and what we need to live for. So use that as a vector for life to go on for you and for that child. And you might have to express some of this stuff through play. Kids at this age oftentimes use play, coloring, drawing, to help them understand things, and you can do it that way too. The last group are toddlers, right? So infants to toddlers, they often don't have the words. At this age, they don't, before the age of 3, they don't really have what we call object permanence. So they don't really understand if you take an object and hide it, that the object could still be there and can be brought back. They think once it's removed, it's totally gone. This is why small children, when you take away a teddy bear or a toy, they get really upset because they think it's gone forever. So for them, this is can be very confusing. They may not fully understand what death is or how it happens, but they will notice separation. They will notice the absence of somebody. So they might often get mad at the caregivers that are still around because they want the other person that's not there anymore. And you're going to have to just use language like, I know, honey, I understand, so-and-so isn't here. And I know you want them and I'm sorry, but they aren't here anymore. They can't come back and I'm here to love you instead. And you're still dearly loved and that person will always love you, right? So reassuring them that they are loved, that they are safe, will be really important at this age. And it won't confuse them to show them pictures of those people and say, oh, do you remember this time? And when they ask, oh, when is she coming over again? Or when is he coming over again? You can say, oh, they won't, honey, because they've gone to heaven, or, their body no longer works, or whatever terminology works for you. They'll understand that. And you just kind of have to talk through it. And if you get upset and they ask you why, you can say, well, I miss that person. I wish they could come back to our house. And they say, well, I don't understand. Why aren't they? Because they're no longer with us. And you're going to have to repeat yourself and they will get it. And they will be able to help you process it. And they will be able to process it too. So I hope that helps you understanding the different stages for kids and what that means and how that can help you. I know a lot of people get concerned of, how do we know when we need help, right? So when do we seek help? Well, it's not the same for every person, but I can give you some generalities. So, while the grief reactions and responses are normal, from loss, and you go through these stages and it's not linear. You go in and out and you think you've gotten to the next stage, or you think someone else has gotten to the next stage and then they regress. That's okay. When you need to seek extra help is basically when these things, after several weeks or months, have continued to interfere with daily living. Hygiene is impacted. They're not taking baths or showers or brushing their teeth or their hair. They're not cleaning their clothes, depending on the age, right? I'm going to speak in generalities here. Not cleaning their clothes or doing things that they need to do. They're not doing their homework or going to see friends, or, you're not going to see people. There's self-harm. There are comments around dying or suicide. And for younger kids, when they're curious about what death is, I don't mean that. That's normal to be curious about something they don't understand. This is when they're talking about themselves wanting to die, right? And that might be a feeling at first, but if that persists several days, several weeks, several months after the loss, this is something to be concerned about. If suddenly their behavior becomes really reckless or impulsive, maybe they turn to substances to numb how they're feeling, or their anxiety or irritability really impacts daily life. These are all reasons to seek other help. And when I say other help, there are things that I want to show you this quick video about related to it. This is something by Brené Brown, one of my favorite psychologists and counselors. And she talks about the difference between having empathy with someone else and having sympathy. And this I found to be really important when we're dealing with grief. So I hope this is helpful.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with "at least." Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now, I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
I hope that was helpful. Oh goodness, still going. That particular Brené Brown talk has always been one that I've enjoyed and has helped me several times, not only to stay in that empathetic space as a professional, but also as a person and a friend and trying to help others. And especially when we feel like, oh, we know how to help them and we can get through this, right? And if they just do this, just take a deep breath with them, tell them you love them, and you're there. Okay, so I know this has been a tough night to talk about all of this. And I want to, keep looking at what we have. I wanted to mention something about grief counseling and supporting. Grief counseling is something that you can seek. So I said when to seek help, right? So grief counseling can be really helpful. Most therapists have some training in grief counseling, and so seeking therapy is great. Grief counselors in particular, if you go to something very specific like grief counseling, and there are some local entities around, if you look for it, some grief counselors are very holistic in nature. They'll do things like meditation, or they'll suggest yoga. Yoga nidra is actually a really good type of movement that can help with grief and loss, as can Tai Chi. So using specific types of movement, using trauma-informed focus with these movements, or using something like eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR, or somatic therapy, which is a form of therapy that uses mind-body techniques to relieve stress. These are all tools in the grief therapist toolkit that can be helpful. So you'll find what's right for you or what's right for your loved ones that are going through this, and everyone has different needs. And just know, I wanted to point out a couple things. If you're supporting those that are going through a grieving period, that's why I showed that video from Brené Brown, because it's really important to stay in that empathetic space and just kind of sit there with them. And it can feel really uncomfortable. And just know that sitting there and being there is an okay place to be. So I'm gonna move my slides around a little bit. I hope that's okay. I wanted to first show you some resources. First of all, Bay Community Health, the behavioral health side or the medical side, we're a resource for you going through grief. No matter what it is, we're here for you. We have people that are trained to help you. And we hope you use us for grieving. Annapolis Child and Family Therapy Center is a great one for kids. If you feel like your kids are going through grief, they have excellent people there that are trained to do child and family therapy. You can also, if you want to find your own person, I put Psychology Today on there because you can go to Psychology Today and you can type in grief therapy. People will come up in your zip code or close to your zip code. So you can use that to find credentialed, certified professionals that are trained to help you through this. There are group-based support systems, and if you wanted something on a national level for children, there is the National Alliance for Children's Grief, and I put the website there that you can use. And then finally, I would be remiss if I didn't mention it. If you felt like someone needs something immediately, there's always the 988 prevention lifeline. There's also the text line where you can do 741-741. And then for those that are part of the LGBTQ plus community, we also have the Trevor Project, which is another warm line to help people in need. So I wanted to point this out in these resources. And if you take a screenshot, you have this, or these slides in this video will be available on Facebook for you to go back to. I want to point this out first. And then what I want to do is I want to spend the last few minutes doing this guided meditation. Promise you don't have to listen to my voice anymore. I'm going to do another guided meditation that I found to be very helpful. And hopefully you all will feel the same way. So I'm going to share my screen once more. And we're going to share this different screen. And we're going to finish with this. So I want to first say thank you for sharing this time with me. Thank you for being here. And I hope that you have a good evening and good night. And we'll finish with this meditation.
Meditation for grief. There are few emotional states that are harder to meditate with than grief. In this meditation, we will work to feel the grief as it is, without a lot of storyline around it. This enables us to look at our grief, ideally without being overwhelmed by it. The more we can sit with our intense emotions, the more we are able to see our way through them and into some state of relief from them. If you're able to simply focus your attention on the breath, I recommend starting with that. It has the effect of calming us and grounding us in our own body. Take a firm seat on a cushion or chair. If you are on a cushion, loosely cross your legs. If you're on a chair, sit away from the back of that chair. Don't slouch too far forward. Find a natural sense of balance where you are upright. You can close your eyes or leave them open for this meditation. Simply tune into the natural cycle of your breathing. Notice when your mind gets distracted by the storyline around what you are grieving. Why did this person have to go? What could I have done differently? What will my life be like without them? When these big questions come up, I invite you to drop the storyline. Drop the various fantasies about the future or memories of the past. Return your attention to the breath. If that is not sustainable, please join me in placing your hand on your heart. Continue to drop the storyline as it arises. Do not feel like you have to get lost in a series of what-if fantasies. You can be present with this emotion. Just feel your grief. Relax with the sensation. Let it wash over you like a wave. When the storyline emerges again, simply let go of it. Return your attention to feeling the grief. It is not as solid as we may think. Without the storyline to support it, the grief can move right through us. Resting with your hand on your heart, simply connect with the breath and allow it to move through your body. If you are unable to repeatedly drop the storyline and rest with the emotion, I invite you to become very inquisitive about your grief. Where does this emotion reside in your body? Does it manifest as a tightening of your shoulders, a sinking in the pit of your stomach? Try to find a physical location for it. Next, ask very specific questions about it. Does it have a color? If so, what shade of that color? Does it have a shape? Is it two-dimensional or three-dimensional? Is it big or small? What size is it exactly? Is it hot or cold? What degree temperature is it? The more you become inquisitive about the emotion, the more you realize that there isn't a solid answer to any of these questions. The emotion isn't as solid and real as it may have originally appeared. Return your focus to your breath. You can keep your hand on your heart. Again, drop the storyline around the emotion and rest with how it manifests. Let it flow through you. Don't feel like you have to lock onto it by perpetuating various stories around the grief. Let it well up, wash over you, and dissolve. This is a practice that you can do whenever grief arises. It does not have to be a formal meditation practice with a timer. Instead, whenever grief rears its head, drop the storyline and rest with this powerful emotion.
Good night, Bay community. Be well and be kind to yourself.